Good afternoon, everyone. Really good to be with all of you, and a big hi to all of you. I've been given 1 hour to be talking to you all. So let me just share with you what I intend talking about. So if we are good on that, or you have some other points that you would like further clarity on, so what you could do is you can start writing your points and you could forward it to the concerned people. So we have last 15 minutes, 15 or 20 minutes. What I can do is I can answer those questions for you. So I'm going to be talking to you about the most critical things, right? When we talk about communication. What is communication? What are the different types of communication? You don't even realize that you're sitting over there and you could be communicating something to the person who's there in front of you. And then we'll get into something which is very simple, a model of communication and how does it really proceed. Another thing which is important is when you're talking about communication, right? Listening. Because the way I understand it, you all would be going out, you all would be becoming entrepreneurs, you would be joining different businesses. It's extremely important to listen accurately to what the person in front of you is saying. But you can't all the time keep listening. What you also need to do is you need to speak. So when you speak, right, are you able to create the desired impact? So these are some of the things that we would be talking about. I would be showing you some movie clips and we would take it forward. So, like normally when we talk about communication, people say, why are we talking about communication? It's such a simple thing. Right from the time when I was born, I started communicating with my mother. When I cried, she knew I was hungry. When I cried, she knew I had wet myself. So I started communicating at that time from my eyes, with the sounds that would come out. So why should I learn about communication? We are talking about communication, and we talk about communication in schools and colleges. What are we really talking about? We are talking about how do you really effectively transmit your message to the person who's there in front of you. If you can transmit it effectively, then half your job is done. So let's take a look at this. Where did the word communication come from? It is derived from a Latin word, communis, which means to share. So what are you trying to do? You are trying to effectively transmit your message to the other person. See, communication does not only mean words, right? It is also the intent behind the words which is important. Now, what do I mean by intent? Intent is, what is it that I want to say? Many times it happens. You say something, but you mean something else. For example, you ask your friend about a third friend, right? How is he? When did you last meet him? And your second friend says, the third friend is good. I'm just coming back from the jail. What would this imply? That the person is good, but in jail. You've not said it very clearly. You've not said directly that the person is in jail, but what are you trying to say? You are trying to say that the person is somewhere else, but the person is absolutely good. The difference between what you intend to say and the words you use, if the person on the other side is able to understand that, then we say communication has been effective. Let's take a look at the types of communication. See, one is oral. You talk to the other person. The other is written. You write and you communicate. The third is body language. Now, when we talk about body language, there are a lot of things that go into it. Your hand gestures, the way you move your hands, the way you stand, the way you look at another person, eye contact. I'll be showing it to you all in just a short while. But what is important for us is to understand all that communicates something about you to the person who's there in front of you. You got to be very careful. You have gone in another couple of years when you go for your business deals, when you go over there and you realize you're sitting over there, you go and you're sitting slumped like this. It doesn't send a right signal. It shows that you are not you are overly comfortable. But that's not how the situation should be. You're making use of your hands extensively. Either it is the content or it is the context with which you are not very familiar. Now, the next is emphatic communication. Some researchers put it differently. Some put it with oral communication and written communication. What is emphatic communication? The niceties, social niceties you use. Sometimes students say, "Ma'am, we go and we are at a loss for words." It must have happened with you all also. You go and you're supposed to talk to someone, but unless you do not establish the bond, how would you really be able to communicate with the person who's there in front of you? So this bonding is extremely important, right? So how do you go ahead? You talk about maybe the weather, you maybe talk about the family, you talk about books, you talk about films, you talk about food. Suppose you come to Gujarat. You would probably begin the conversation as, "Fafda or jalebi kahan milti hai? I would like to take it back home." This is a typical dish where Gujaratis are concerned. So what happens is you've set the ball rolling for making some kind of communication. The other is, little do people talk about it, proxemics. It is the distance you maintain from the other person. Please be very careful about it. We have 4 different distances or zones, as we refer to them. The first is your intimate zone, which spills from where you are to 1.5 feet. Right? Now, you will not allow anyone to enter into that space or zone. Only your mama, papa. Maybe your brother, sister. Then begins your personal territory, which spills up to 4 feet. Now, my table is my personal territory. If you come and I don't know you, you cannot come and keep your books or papers on my table. This is my personal territory. Then begins your public social territory, which spills up to 11 feet. And finally, you have your public territory or zone. See, you would notice when you go out in the evening with your parents for any dinner, and it's an official dinner, you would notice people who are very close friends are standing close. But when there is hierarchy, people maintain a distance. right? It's something like the COVID times. You have to maintain that distance. When you go up on stage and you speak, you have everyone over 11 feet away from you. That's public speaking. Remember the distance, yeah. Remember the distance you maintain from the other person also talks about your relationship, right? So now we have chronemics. Chronemics is the time you maintain, the time you manage. You know, lots of people say, no, I do this tomorrow. When tomorrow comes, I'll do it tomorrow, in the hope that tomorrow will someday turn into today. It says something about you. You have not said anything, but it still says something about you. You would need to be careful that you manage all these effectively. Because I just share with you, I've talked in detail about fatigue, proxemics, chronemics. Written, we will not have the time to go into, and oral we will be doing at the time when we are doing when we are doing how do you really speak. Now, what is left over here, which I need to deliberate upon a little more, is body language. See, when you're sitting, try to ensure that your spine is straight. Back is absolutely straight. Can you see my posture? Okay, see when I'm sitting, my back is absolutely straight. I'm not sitting with a kind of, this kind of posture. That's wrong. Sit straight. So you could come either to the edge of the chair or you push yourself back when you're sitting. That is important if you want to communicate something good about yourself. When you're standing and you're talking, can you all see? See, I'm standing like this. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm resting all my weight on one leg. But if I stand like this, both my feet are positioned in just the right kind of way. Balance your weight. Balance your weight on both your feet. You would be able to communicate the right message. Eye contact. Can you see my eyes? It should be direct. It should not be a case that I'm not able to manage eye contact with the other person. We've had lots of these senior people who come and they say, if there is someone who does not maintain eye contact, I don't trust the person. So when you maintain eye contact, you're sending a message that you are honest, you are trustworthy, and that is what makes all the difference. So let's take a look at this and then we come back to this diagram. Try to understand this absolutely clearly, the process. See, when we talk about communication, there need to be two people minimum. Person one and person two. Right now, I'm person one and you are person two. See, there's so many ideas that are going on in my mind. What I try to do is, I try to encode all these ideas and transmit these ideas to you. You would decode the ideas as a receiver. But what is important, please note, is you need to give an internal response to perceived message. Right now, you've not spoken. You've just given an internal response because now your role will change. You will become the sender and I become the receiver. It is a role reversal. It is only when this entire cycle is completed that we say communication has taken place. Otherwise, communication cannot take place. I just shared it with you with a slide in a minute's time. Many people say, see, this is what needs to be done. Da 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 da. Finished. Has the other person understood? Have you checked for understanding? Do remember this cycle. Now you would realize there's a word noise, which has been put at 4 different places, in fact, all over the place. What is this noise? Noise is something's going on in your mind. Maybe right now you're thinking, 2:18, God, what a good time to take an afternoon nap. Or maybe go and see Suryavanshi. Right? And here, this faculty is teaching us. It's disturbing you. It's disturbing you. You find it difficult to concentrate. In such situations, what are you supposed to do? The first is, don't shy away from any kind of feeling that there's noise in your mind. The minute you realize there's noise in your mind, sit down, jot down points while the discussion's going on, ask questions, paraphrase. What is paraphrase? You repeat the essence of the message. You would realize it's easier for you to focus, and you have been able to do away with noise. So feedback is important. Doing away with noise is important. Let me just share something interesting with all of you. Okay, so here we go. Managing director says to general manager, tomorrow morning, there will be a total eclipse of the sun at 9 o'clock. This is something which we cannot see every day. So let the workforce line up outside in their best clothes to watch it. To mark the occasion of this rare occurrence, I will personally explain the phenomenon to them. If it is raining, we will not be able to see it very well. And in that case, the workforce should assemble in the canteen. Please note, there is no second part of the communication process where the receiver becomes a sender. So now the message, it is transmitted as this from general manager to department heads. By order of the managing director, there will be a total eclipse of sun at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. If it is raining, we will not be able to see it in our best clothes on the site. In this case, the disappearance of the sun will be followed through in the canteen. This is something we cannot see happening every day. See, the message is becoming shorter and shorter. Department heads to executives. By order of the managing director, we shall follow the disappearance of the sun in our best clothes in the canteen at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. The managing director will tell us whether it is going to rain. This is something which we cannot see happen every day. Executives to factory supervisors. If it is raining in the canteen tomorrow morning, which is something that we cannot see happen every day, the managing director in his best clothes will disappear at 9 o'clock. The worst is yet to come. The factory supervisors goes to the employees and says, "It will rain in the canteen tomorrow morning, and the managing director will disappear without his clothes." This is something we cannot see happen every day. Now, you would notice how the message keeps changing when the intent is not clearly understood and you have not paraphrased it while giving it back. Right? So it is important for you to understand what is being said, to repeat or give feedback to the other person. Then only would you be able to be successful. So let's carry on from where we left off. Okay, so here is a picture. I'd like you to take a look at that. Right, when you take a look at this picture, probably some of the thoughts that come to your mind: no, prohibited, stop. When all these thoughts come to your mind, you would like to go ahead with those thoughts. But there's someone who comes and says, no, this is a jogging track. It is the logo of a company. It is probably 2 slices of pizza which have been put together. The first thought that comes to your mind: what crap, yeah? What's this person talking about? Doesn't make sense. That's a time when you need to get all these thoughts out of your mind and take a step backward. Why is the person saying what he or she is saying? You know, you with your friends, right? With your teachers would many times have this difference of opinion. And both sides are not able to understand the perspective of the other person. You want to insist this is a stop sign, and I insist this is a logo. You know, one of us needs to take a step backwards. One of us needs to understand that there could be another perspective. You know, when you talk about all this, just keep one thing in mind. Different perceptions. What are perceptions? Perceptions are the way in which you see everything around you, and they vary. They cannot be the same. You develop a perspective based on your perception. Right? So this is something that is critical and needs to be kept in mind. Let's now proceed to listening. Listening is tougher than speaking. It's very easy for me to sit over here and to say, you know, I'm sure you all are listening. I hope you're listening accurately. Maybe you are not. Maybe you are. I have no idea. But what is important for you is to ensure that the perception, remember the key word in communication is perception, that you are accurately perceiving what is being communicated. You know, at the end of the session, if I were to ask 4 or 5 of you, what did you listen to? Maybe all of you come up with a different idea. When you come up with a different idea, you need to think, why did I come up with this different idea? Why did someone else come up with a different idea? See, it's important. It's important for you to understand that the mind of an individual moves like a pendulum. It keeps going this way. The speaking capacity of an individual, if it is 400 words per minute, the capacity of an individual to absorb or to listen is 4 times that. So if I speak 400 words per minute, your mind has the capacity to absorb 1,600 words per minute. The mind is going like this. Suddenly in my examples, I probably use the word picnic. When I talk about picnic, what comes to your mind is last time when the school took us out for a picnic. You get caught in that. And then it becomes difficult for the mind to come back. We'll talk about how you can bring the mind back. But before that, what you need to understand is there are certain obstacles to the listening process. And see, when we're talking about listening, we're not only talking about listening from the ears. When you listen to the words, you listen to the sounds, you listen to what you've seen. Right? 2 of the friends who've been viewing things in just the right kind of way may have listening errors. So some of the deterrents, some of the issues where listening is concerned, could be ego. One of you sitting over there, I can see so many of you, probably is a topper. And I'm sure there would be toppers in school. If another student comes and says, boss, what you are saying is not right, because, and gives a reason. This topper says, what the hell, yeah? I've been topping. I'm the person who's been topping. I would know what I'm talking about. Ego prevents you from listening. Maybe you're not interested in what's being said. Maybe you're too busy listening to yourself. My God, I have this problem. I have to submit a project tomorrow. Miss was not willing to listen to what I'm trying to say. I can't concentrate right now. You're just not interested in listening to what the other person is saying. You could be preoccupied. Last time my boyfriend or my girlfriend was rather rude to me. This time I will show this person. Or you could have different ideas and thoughts that are going on in your mind. When all these things happen, listening becomes problematic. Let me just share something with you. It's a clip from a movie. Maybe you've seen the movie. I'm not too sure. But let me just share this with you. This is in the lighter vein, of course.
Hey. Ross, I know you're pissed at me, but we have to talk about this.
Actually, we don't.
Fine, okay, fine. But I gotta say, technically, I didn't even do anything wrong.
What? You didn't do anything wrong?
I said I didn't technically.
Okay, well, let's put aside the fact that you accidentally picked up my grandmother's ring and you accidentally proposed to Rachel.
Can I just stop you right there for a second? When people do this, I don't really know what that means. You were saying?
And I can even understand that you couldn't tell Rachel. But why couldn't you tell me? Huh? You had all day to, and you didn't.
I know, I should have. I'm sorry.
Not using it right, Joe. I'm gonna go.
No, come on, look, Ross, we have to get past this.
Give me the bag.
No, look, I don't know what else to do. I said I'm sorry.
Joey?
Now you should scream at me or curse me or hit me.
I'm not gonna hit you.
Why not? You'll feel better. I'll feel better. And you know you want to? I can see it in your eyes.
No, I don't.
A little bit.
No.
A little bit.
No.
A little bit more. No, hit me.
Give me the bag.
Hit me.
Joey, give me the bag.
Hit me.
Joe, I'm
Hit
not
me.
kidding.
Hit me.
No.
Hit me, hit me, hit me, hit me.
You ducked!
I'm sorry. It was a reflex.
Oh my God, this really hurts.
I couldn't help it. When a fist comes at your face, you duck. Look.
What is the matter with you?
You were supposed to duck. Why didn't you duck?
Why don't we talk about this on the way to the hospital?
Good, good. Yeah, maybe while we're there, they can check your reflexes.
Oops.
So, well, that was in the light. That was in the lighter way. So that was only in the lighter way that I wanted to show to you, because at some points there was listening, some points it was inaccurate listening, some point perceptions were different. But at the end of the day, two friends, best of friends, there was misunderstanding. And all misunderstanding, miscommunication begins and ends with a listening problem. Right? So now we need to go back to the screen show that we had when we were taking a look. Hey, Kuntal, good to see you. Right? So we were here on the deterrence of the listening process. We've already talked about these. Each one of you would need to identify what is your deterrent to the listening process. If you are able to identify what's a deterrent to your listening process, it's going to be easier for you to communicate. And if I can share a secret with all of you, I'm a very poor listener. I feel it's so much easier to talk, but sitting in one place and listening to what the other person is saying can be problematic, because then you need to engage further to ensure that your listening is just right or it's not. You know, it's very interesting when we talk about listening errors, and if you believe what I'm trying to say, these are tried and tested techniques. If you think they don't work, you know, all you need to do is my mail. You can easily access it from Kuntal or from Astha Piyush and write to me and tell me this has not worked. But the most important is you need to understand you are not in a good listening mood right now, position right now. Then only would you follow these strategies. Maintain direct eye contact. Can you see my eyes? They're not wavering. I don't know at which person's student I'm looking because there's so many of you, but I'm trying to be steady with my eye contact, and that's exactly what's expected. You know, what is paraphrase? You repeat the essence of the message. If you can repeat the essence of the message and you don't just start repeating, what you say is, let me just check if I've understood you correctly. And you repeat the essence. Ask questions wherever you think there is a need. What you need to do is you need to empathize. When we talk about empathy, lots of people say, you know, to get in the shoes of the other person. And I always ask them, what's the number of your shoe? It's much more than that. Try to understand what the other person is saying before you yourself want to be understood. Together with that, you need to maintain a conducive listening posture. What's a conducive listening posture? Back straight, erect. Don't go down in your chair. You know, it's all, and it's scientifically proven. If your back is straight, you would be able to concentrate much higher. Think of the exam days. You don't, like tomorrow you have your exam or maybe another hour's time. You don't lie down in bed and read. You sit on the table and chair, concentrated posture. And then you start listening to what the other person is saying. You would realize if you were to follow all this, it's going to be easier for you to communicate, because now it gives you a handle on what you need to speak. Let me share a short clip by Malcolm X. And we would be able to cull a lot of our learnings from there. But before we get on to it, let's glance at this slide, and then I'll come back to the slide again. You would need to identify these in the speech of Malcolm X. You know, when you're speaking, it's important, very, very important for you to ensure that your voice articulation is just right. When you talk about voice articulation, we're talking about pauses, we're talking about the pitch, we're talking about what and where do you emphasize, what should your pace be. Pauses, where pauses are concerned, it's extremely important to weave in your pause. And it should be dramatic. It cannot be, like, kahin pe bhi man kiya pause kar liya. You just pause wherever you want. I'm sure that out of all of you who are sitting over here, many of you would have learned how to sing. When you get into music, remember one thing. You cannot in your alap pause wherever you want. There is a natural way in which you pause. And the same is when it comes to voice articulation. What is your pitch? Where do you emphasize? The pace at which you go, it can be tuck, or it could be tuck, 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 depending on what you want to communicate. Because voice articulation, you have to keep it in mind. Lots of people say after they've done, some speaking, and it's so very tired, my throat is hurting. That means the person's not been speaking the right way. It's never the throat that hurts. It's always the stomach that hurts. The voice comes from, what a diaphragm is? Under your ribs, you have this kind of curved thing, right? Immediately below that, your voice should come from there. I know when I've done 3 classes, 4 classes in a day, my stomach starts hurting. I've heard lots of people say, yaar gala baith gaya, like the throat is in a bad shape because I've been speaking. Throat cannot be in a bad shape. Good strategy. I wish you all were there in front of me. I could have demonstrated it to you. See, go down on your knees and put your hand on your stomach and do Om. Om, the one thing that you do in your yoga, and put your hand on your stomach. The sound should come from the stomach. If it comes from the stomach, you're speaking the right way. The next is, we already talked about body language. Look happy to be with the other person. Your hand gesture should be right, posture should be straight, eye contact direct. Now, this is the content design on which we may come towards the end if we have time. The content is always woven with the context. The content, which was a huge success in a context, need not necessarily be a success in another context. How do you match the content to the context? That becomes critical. And in this, there are two things first you need to keep in mind: the opening and the closing. The opening forces the person to listen to what you're saying. And the closing is what the person takes back with him or her. Spend a lot of time in your opening and closing. It's said in the opening, you tell them what you're going to tell them throughout. In the middle, you tell them what you promised to tell them in the opening. And in the closing, you tell them what you've been telling them all throughout. It's only a game of telling. Right? I'd also like to give you the breakup of the entire speech that you may give. You may need to go, you may need to talk to maybe government officials, maybe higher ups, and you have a prepared speech. I'll give you the breakup for a 30-minute speech, and you can modify it accordingly. 2 minutes for your opening. 22 minutes for the main body of the content. 1 minute for closing. And 5 minutes for question answers. I repeat, 2 minutes opening, 22 minutes main body, 1 minute closing, and 5 minutes question answers. If you can manage this time, you would realize it's easier for the other person to say, yeah, I have been able to be with the other person while the person was talking. Having said that, it's not only the opening and the closing which keeps a person hooked on. It's also the main body of the content. So let me talk to you a little about Malcolm X and the speech which I'm now going to show you. This is a slightly dated speech, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and you will sure enjoy, what is being said. Now, at the end of it, we'll try to analyze what happened. Why was it so very impactful? And that'll help us to move ahead in just the right kind of way. So where Malcolm X is concerned, he was one of the African American Muslim ministers, and he was also a human rights activist. Right, so he was one person who spoke a lot on what is it that people should be doing, and the press, if the press are not very good, press are not very kind. So he did have a perspective on that. So let me try sharing this speech with you.
In order for you and me to devise some kind of method or strategy to offset some of the events or a repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently, we have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate. We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate, you should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you? And I, for one, as a Muslim, believe that the white man is intelligent enough. If he were made to realize how black people really feel and how fed up we are without that old compromise and sweet talk. Stop sweet talking him. Tell him how you feel. Tell him what kind of hell you've been catching, and let him know that if he's not ready to clean his house up, if he's not ready to clean his house up, he shouldn't have a house. It should catch on fire and burn down.
Sorry, yeah. So this was something which is beautiful, this really beautiful speech. So what we need to do is we need to understand what made it so powerful, right? This speech happened in the year 1962. And we're still watching it, and we've been watching it for many years where the speech is concerned. So certain things that you would need to keep in mind before you begin speaking. The first, the most important is, who is my audience? What is it that is going to appeal to the audience? How should I be packaging it? How should I deliver it to the person who's there in front of me? Malcolm X knew who his audience was. He knew how to establish that emotional connect with the audience. You know, you may be trying to establish an intellectual connect, that's all right. But what is important is you need to at least know what are the requirements. You need to at least proceed in that direction. Find out who's going to be listening to what I'm saying. The minute you have clarity, it helps you give your content some shape. Here, let's take a look at the content of Malcolm X. Let's take a look at the body language, and let's take a look at the voice articulation. You know, at the end of the day, the cause is the most important. He keeps saying, let's get to the root cause. Has your analysis of the situation, whatever you're going to be talking about, is it thorough? Is it complete? Is it concise? Is it comprehensive? If it is, the analysis is, all of these together, you know you've already got to the root cause. It's going to be easier for you to take it forward. Then it's a question of giving it some kind of direction. The same content to deliver, what does he do? He makes use of questions. Very powerful device, very powerful device. You would have noticed he uses questions which don't necessitate an answer. They are questions, you know, for which you're not really waiting to get an answer, but you move on. For instance, who gave you that right? Who gave you that right? He carries on. You're not waiting for an answer. These are powerful questions. They're referred to as rhetorical questions. Very powerful. It gets the other person to start thinking and listening at the same time, because you're not really getting an answer. He also uses humor. Who taught you to hate your skin? I mean, it is now, if a person would use a statement of this kind, he or she should also have a similar skin color. Right? So humor, while it's a good strategy, it's a very dangerous strategy. When you enter into this domain of speeches and speaking, my advice to all of you is try to avoid humor. You don't know what's going to gel with the person who's there in front of you. You don't know on what the other person may take offense. And you end up laughing yourself at the joke. And it's going to be such an embarrassing situation. So we talked about humor. Another thing that he uses is emotional connect. You know, when you talk about emotional connect, how do you connect with the person who's there in front of you emotionally? There could be an intellectual connect. There could be an emotional connect. You know, it's very interesting. When you have the emotional connect, the connect is longer than if it is only an intellectual connect. And that's one of the reasons why we're also talking about phatic communication. You remember? When I said social niceties, how do you build connects with the person who's there in front of you? It's important to go ahead that way. Right? Another thing that he uses is this concept of oneness. When you're talking about oneness, what are we really saying? The audience and me as Malcolm X are one. There's no difference between you and me. It's a question of instant bonding. Who is your audience? Have you thought about the techniques through which you would carry on with this bonding? If yes, go ahead. Now, let's look at his body language. Let's look at his voice articulation. When you take a look at his body language, erect posture. Erect posture. He's not resting weight on one foot or resting weight on the other foot. Balance your weight on both the feet. That's the most important. He looks at everyone directly in the eye. What he tries to also do is he uses his finger. That's not a very good sign. That's not a very good sign. We say it's so very parenting. But for the role that Malcolm X has taken upon himself to cleanse the system, that role is absolutely appropriate, that of a parent. So when you are standing and when you're speaking, try to avoid using a finger. If you want to use your hands, this is how it should go. Your whole palm, can you see my palm? And hands should always be facing heavenwards. They should never be facing downwards. Right? So that is where his body language is concerned. Let's move on to the voice articulation. Did he not make use of pauses? There's so much passion in his voice. There's so much fury in his voice. Each word is emphasized. Each word is important. His pitch is high. His pace is fast, which shows urgency. There's a task that needs to be completed. His pitch shows that, his pace shows that. He doesn't pause, but he emphasizes each word. You remember we were talking about the content and we were talking about the context. And he said, you got to pause. But if the context demands, there cannot be a pause anywhere. There cannot then be a pause at any point. And that's exactly what he does. So we have taken a look at Malcolm's speech. Now let's go back to the slideshow that we were on. And I would like to draw your attention to a couple of strategies that have not emerged. Yeah. So while we are talking about it, humor we've taken a look at. And I said it's one of the most powerful techniques, but a very dangerous one. And I warned you against using that. We've taken a look at questions. And when we talk about questions, they are rhetorical questions which need to be used. But there are two of these strategies which we've not talked about, nor have we seen them in operation. The first is the use of statistics. Can I share a secret with you all? I don't like numbers. I'm not a numbers person. But when it comes to a presentation, I know the people who are there in front of me would love it when I say 7%, 80%, 13%. I have to use the numbers. Similarly, you too have to use the numbers. Statistics should be accurate, right? If you can give the right kind of statistics, another thing you'll have to keep in mind, it's always where statistics is concerned, where questions are concerned, you always do it in numbers of 3. I know Malcolm X, his entire speech was questions. But you do it in numbers of 3. And when you do it in numbers of 3, it is done with that staccato impact. Cut, cut, cut. Your tone goes up, higher, higher up. You will have to think, how do you want to go ahead with it? All of you are trying, aiming to become leaders. Does leadership exist in schools in Sikkim? Does leadership exist in Sikkim? Does leadership exist in India? From the micro to the macro. I'm not waiting for an answer. I'm not waiting for an answer. Because the focus now is going to shift from place to concept on leadership. What exactly is leadership? The walk and the talk where leadership is concerned, be it any school in any state of India, and I just take it forward. Statistics. Can you use those to have everyone listen to you? Yes, you can. Do your research. You just cannot go and start speaking. The stories bit, let me talk to you a little about stories. A very powerful device to capture the attention of people. So, when you talk about stories, stories are a very, very powerful technique to build You know, that kind of momentum where everyone starts listening to what you're trying to say. So stories can be of two types. Very powerful device. Now, when we talk about stories being of two types, one is just the skeleton of the story that you give. The other is you make the person sit as if you've made the person sit in front of a camera and the whole thing is unfolding. So if you all have strong hearts, let me tell you a story. Do you all have strong hearts? Just nod. I can see us nod. Yes? Good. So this happened sometime in the year 1980. Now I'm giving you two different versions, the same story. And you'll have to identify, you know, the difference, and you will have to see which is most suited to you. So my father was posted in Moradabad. And during my summer vacations, there was a communal riot. A pig was let into Eidgah. There were lots of people who died in this riot. And DD News every day said, only 3 people had died in Moradabad, then every day we saw hundreds and hundreds of corpses passing by. This is one way of telling you a story. Let me give you the other way in which a story is to be told. It's for you to decide which story suits your style. On 23rd May, 1980, everything was peaceful and quiet. Suddenly, we heard the shriek of people, the rustle the rustle of the trees. People were running helter and skelter. Later, we learned that a pig had been let loose in Eidgah. Communal riots, communal violence. Every day in front of our house, we would see 10 corpses without heads covered in blood-stained white sheets being carried in front of our house. But Teledoordarshan would announce 3 people died in the communal violence in Moradabad. You know, I was kind to you all. I didn't give you all more gruesome details. Now, what was I trying to do in the second instance? It was as if I made you sit in front of a TV screen. You know, you would talk about blood being splattered on the road. You would talk about children, grown-ups, you know, there on the road yelling for water and all. You know, paint the picture. Now, it depends on who your audience is. What is it that the audience wants? What is it that you are presenting? Suppose you've gone for a loan, hypothetically speaking. Obviously, you can't have, you know, the person would not have that much time. You've gone to a civil servant who would not have that much time. So probably you need to follow a totally different strategy. You know, what you need to keep in mind is, let me give you a scene. You have something important to talk about. And what you've been trying to do is you're trying to get the government official, but you've not been able to get him to sit and talk to you. Suddenly, one day, you see this senior gentleman get inside a lift. You run inside the lift with him, and he says, "What's up?" "Sir, I got to talk to you." He says, "Tell me quickly." Now, it takes the lift only 2 minutes to reach from the ground floor to the 7th floor, where he has his office. What do you say in those 2 minutes that makes him go to his room, call up his secretary and say, "All appointments for the day cancelled. I'm sitting with a student from Tashiding." Now, the focus that is required, what is it that the other person wants that's required, the framing of the message is required. You may know everything, but the way in which you frame your content is important. Let me give you an example. We had COVID some time back. And suppose I were to frame the message. 60% of the people died during COVID. That's one way. And the other framing is 40% of the people were saved. People, if you just report in the second way, you frame your message in the second way, everyone is going to say the efforts of the government were brilliant. 40% of the people were saved. But if you frame it in the first way, where you say 60% of the people were killed, everyone is going to say, see what the government is doing? The government is not able to do anything substantial. So your framing is important. How do you put the words together? You may have the content, but you may not be able to frame it in just the right way. So before we close, there is, in the lighter vein, I'd like to share something with you, how the positioning of words can bring about a change in meaning. You need to write down whatever you're writing, whatever you're going to speak. It'll help you understand how do you now really need to take it forward. Look at the message once, twice, thrice. Change the wordings, change the positioning for the meaning to be accurate. The sentence says, Hari said that he loved her. I'm going to pick up the word only and change the position of the word and see how the meaning of the sentence undergoes a change. Only is the word. Only Hari said that he loved her. Hari only said that he loved her. Hari said only that he loved her. Hari said that only he loved her. Hari said that he only loved her. Hari said that he loved only her. And Hari said that he loved her only. I've done nothing to the original sentence. Only shifted the position of one word. And see how the meaning of the sentence undergoes a change. So let us quickly sum up. We are left with 3 minutes. Let's quickly sum up all that we were talking about. So what is important? What is important where communication is concerned, to be able to understand who is your audience? What is it that the person wants? So whether you are doing oral communication, you're doing written communication, phatic, chronemics, proxemics, you have to keep the audience in mind. While designing your content, try to ensure that there is a good mapping with the context. If the mapping is good, it's easy for you to take it forward. Not necessarily. Sometimes it so happens that there is a mental block when it comes to the person in front of you. The person may have a totally different perspective and you have a totally different perspective. You cannot ask the person in front of you to change his or her own stand. You will need to take a step backward and you will need to then move ahead, keeping the perspective of the other person in mind. Listening can get hampered. But if you are aware of the fact that right now you're not listening accurately, you could follow the 5-step process that I talked to you about. Finally, When you're speaking to someone, remember voice articulation, remember body language, remember the design of the content. When you talk about the design of the content, the most important is the opening and the closing. If you've been able to make a mark with your opening, you can rest assured the effort that you're going to be putting in is going to be much lesser than otherwise. So thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to all of you. So any questions? I think I finished a minute ahead of time.
We understood very well. Everything is clear.
Everything's clear, okay? Or anything else that you want to know where communication is concerned?
Everything is clear.
Thank you. Sit. Kuntal, what is your question? You raise a question and then it will set the ball rolling. What's your question? So because right now I think the others are feeling a little awkward or embarrassed to ask. So probably you could set the ball rolling with your question.
So ma'am, really I tell from heart because from first day to till now, I'm listening all of the sessions and I have lots of questions and already Bisal sir already addressed lots of answers. And today's session, I have just only question because I am facing lots of time in the communications. Okay. I am facing one is the problem is the language. Okay. And another problem is the confidence. Because I know, like example, if I give you one example, I know English, I can speak English, but the confidence to
I'll tell you.
communicate, that's something I'm lagging behind. So I request to Ma'am Ji, how I build the confidence with me.
Okay, so good. Kuntal, I'll put it this way, that there's a fear of speaking, right? So, and that's probably one of the reasons why there's no confidence, right? So there are some tried and tested strategies. I'm happy you raised this point. So what we try to do is, Kuntal, we keep suppressing the fear. The more you suppress, the more does it erupt with volcanic force. Ideally, you should identify it. Then it's like a demon sitting on your back. All you need to do is push it off. So now that you've identified this fear, let's take a look at some strategies that can be followed. The first, never ever make a presentation or speak on an empty stomach. Right? Have biscuits, have tea or coffee. Don't have anything cold. Pani, don't have water. Thanda kar dega. Don't have anything thanda. Pepsi, Coke or something, You need to have that warmth in you, Kuntal, when you're speaking. And if possible, put in as much sugar as you can. Sugar will give you the kick. So you've got both warmth and kick, and then you just need to go ahead. Right? That's your first strategy. And if you can take Parle G biscuits or Tiger, I'm not endorsing the product, Kuntal, but it's just because it's very high in sugar. Right? So I'm just suggesting that. So take that. The second, right, do your breathing exercise. So Kuntal, like sit straight, put your hand on your stomach. And when you breathe, you must almost feel sit straight, Kuntal, come on, breathe. You should feel your stomach go in and come out. Really deep breathing, right? And you do it, you almost feel you've sucked in the entire air, right? Hold it on and then just leave it. That's the second strategy. The third, you feel you're still nervous and you have not been able to get the confidence. Go to the washroom and follow the Dale Carnegie model. Don't do it in front of everyone. Everyone's going to laugh, right? So you tell yourself, I'm good, aren't I? I'll succeed, won't I? What's there to prevent me from succeeding? And your confidence will start growing. Another strategy. When you talk about fear or you talk about lack of confidence, it's a very steep incline. And then it's a plateau stage. So if you understand that it's only going to last for 30 seconds, right? Control yourself for 30 seconds. If there's a watch over there, 30, 29, 28, 27, and you just look at it and 30 seconds will be gone in a jiffy. and then you're on comfortable ground. Follow this, Kuntal, and you would realize, but you'll only do this when you've taken the demon out of your system. Right? So there is this point I did share. This is from, how do you pronounce it? Leadership.
Yeah.
Okay, so Leadership SSS. I did share that strategy, that slide, which had strategies for listening, improving listening. The most important is you need to maintain eye contact. Paraphrase to as great an extent as possible. Ask questions. The way Kuntal asked me a question in between. Try to empathize. And Stephen Covey says, what is empathy? Seek first to understand and then to be understood. And your listening posture should be conducive. When I say conducive, back should be straight. You can either come to the edge of the chair the way I'm sitting, or you could push yourself back. The small of my back is touching the chair. The minute your back is straight, you would realize you're more attentive to whatever is being said. You may also want to jot down points. Right. And having said that, we did talk about statistics. And I'd just like to share some statistics with you. Leadership, it is said that when a person listens, he or she listens to the verbal content only 7% of the time. 93% of the time, out of which 55% is on body language. And the rest, which would be approximately 37 or 48, I think 48%. No, it can't be 48, it has to be 37. 37% of it or thereabouts. 37 plus 7, 44, 45, 38%. So it's going to be 38% of the time the person focuses on voice articulation, right? So what you have to keep in mind is ensure that you have these ups and downs in your voice. Ensure that you are able to hold on to the attention of people who are there in front of you, either through body language, that's minimal body language, using your hands only when there's a need, right? Or through your voice articulation. So it depends on you. How would you like to take it forward? But your voice should not be flat. Try play reading. Take up all the roles and do that play reading. Try to ensure that there's fluency in whatever you're trying to say. Do all this, and you would realize you're able to capture the audience. Okay, so now stage fear of speaking. We've just done that. Telling school, we've just done how do you remove the stage fear? How do you develop that confidence? I repeat, identify the fear. Second, don't do any kind of public speaking on an empty stomach. Have tea or coffee. That's the second that you need to do. Take in some glucose biscuits if that's going to be helpful. Follow the Dale Carnegie model. Boost your morale, boost your confidence. And when you come over there, do deep breathing. And then when you come over there, look at the watch and you would realize there is this, sharp incline, then it's a plateau stage. So if you can manage yourself for the first 30 seconds, then it's a cakewalk. Any other questions that we have?
I think, ma'am, they have no questions.
Right, Kuntal. So thank you. I wish you all the best and do what you want to do. Follow your dreams. Follow your dreams is for all the children who are there. And tomorrow we want to hear of all your successes. Wish you all the best. Thank you.